Hi everyone, my name is Cynthia. Let's talk books. And I have, for the last couple of years, been buddy reading books with one of my best friends. And it's been such an incredible experience. And it hits home to for me the reason why I like surrounding myself with people who are smarter than I am. She is just a brilliant person, and I think when we read things together, we help each other like come understand different perspectives in the things that we're reading. And right now we're reading a collection of fiction that is really great. It's difficult to read, and I feel like she brought up the point that it's the key to understanding a book we read previously. So I want to talk about books that are keys to understanding other books. And it's really amazing the way that works in art overall, but especially in fiction, because these writers often read things that influence their work, and sometimes then that previous classical book or that previous book that author read becomes the key for to understanding their book in some ways, and vice versa. So that's happening with right now, and I want to talk about that specifically. Right now we're reading Jose Luis Borges's collected fiction. So this is a translation by Andrew Hurley. So we are reading this in English. But last year we read 2666 by Roberto Bolaño. I read it in Spanish and my friend read it in English. But one of the things about this book is that the first three parts of this book are a little bit scattered, a little bit difficult to read, difficult to understand. It's hard to understand the purpose of those parts. It all comes together in the end, but even when you feel like you have a grip on what Bolaño is doing, there's still a little bit of uncertainty, a little bit of a question mark there. But now reading Borges, it's like a light went off. The key to opening parts of 2666 are here. She's the one that figured that out first, and so thank God for smarter friends. This is probably not something new. Like, my friend and I are both historians. We both have PhDs in history. So we're not dumb people, but we're not literary scholars, right? We haven't spent years studying Borges, studying Bolaño, or studying Latin American literature. So this might be already something that has been fully fleshed out, these ideas in literary analysis, but I want to talk about it. So we started reading Borges, and we decided that we were going to read Borges in a bit of we're not going to try to complete reading this collected fictions book, that we were just going to skip around to the parts we wanted to read. In the end, if we finish reading the whole book, then great. If not, that's totally fine. We're just going to read the things that we're into and not force ourselves to read through all of Borges. So okay, we read one section, it was fine, it was short. We're like, okay, great, we can read another section. That section was called Fictions. It's the collection called Fictions, and the first essay here, Tolon Ukbar Orbis Tertius, is such a difficult essay to read, or short story. I fell asleep while reading this one. So did my friend, but she persevered. She kept reading, didn't give up. Got to the end, and she said she had a revelation in the end that, aha, this is what Bolaño is doing here. And then reread it again. Now, I kind of gave up on that story. I got about 3/5 of the way through it and was like, oh my God, asleep. I don't want to read it. And then we talked about it, and she made me then finish the story, and I was like, yes, absolutely. I now know what you're talking about. That, her revelation about how the two books are related, then made me keep reading, because the next story in this collection was also one that's a little bit hard to read. But once I had that in mind of reading it through the eyes of 2666, that this second story completely made sense. And then, so for me, this book was a key to understanding of, or better understanding 2666, but also with 266 in mind, I was able to keep reading Borges. So it was just one of those like really great experiences I'm having at the moment, and I think that's why I'm so excited to talk about it on here. So one of the things in the stories in this fictions collection here is that it's really clear that Borges was playing with the ideas or understanding, giving us this understanding of the infinite nature of space and time. There's a story in here that I think is really great at discussing that, and that is the Library of Babel. Sorry, in Spanish it's Babel, so I'm kind of mixing all my languages and pronunciations here. But that story is fantastic with talking about just the different possibilities in space and time, and all of the stories, all of the histories of the world and universe collected in this library where everything's organized in a way that is not understandable or not easily understandable, and and it just brings forth those themes, right? That space and time can be infinite and knowable at the same time that it is unknowable. Well, with that, I'm like, that's what Borges or what Bolaño is doing at the beginning of, or throughout most of 2666, because really the heart of 2666 doesn't come until like part, oh goodness, 1, 2, 3, 4. The book begins with these critics, these literary critics, and their obsession with a writer, Archimboldi, a writer that they've never seen, a writer that few people have ever seen. There's a bit of a question mark about whether this writer even exists, except that he keeps publishing works. So they're obsessed with this writer, and then Bolaño takes us through their lives, their personal lives, their academic lives, and it doesn't quite make sense. It's written in a way that's like, feels like a dream. Like, is this a dream? Like the writers, like we start with our professional lives, and we're kind of thinking like, okay, this is a criticism of like academia. Then randomly they start like doing things like beating up a taxi driver, having conversations with people at the park. That just there's these scenes in that part that feel like random, but also they're not, right? You get a sense that Bolaño's trying to say something. This is where he sometimes is digging at some meaning. I'm getting carried away, but basically some of those stories I feel like are really speaking to that theme of time and space, and the way they are both unknowable and knowable, and just the way that Borges plays with those themes. I think that Bolaño is kind of in conversation with Borges on that, and it's really amazing when you see them having that conversation. So that's what I'm really talking about books being a key to another one. It's a conversation really that these two authors are having across time and space. There's a story in Borges where he's writing about a contemporary writer for him writing Don Quixote, but he's basically rewriting everything Cervantes wrote, but writing it from somebody who is attempting from the present to go back and like live and experience the world the way Cervantes did, except that's not possible. So it's if you haven't read Borges and you're interested in these themes, I think you should. But I'm like, it all makes sense. And Borges is not easy, by the way. I should say it's not easy to read. It's taken a lot of concentration when I'm reading him. But I'm finding really interesting themes, and now a really interesting conversation between him and Bolaño. And I think it's present in at least one other of Bolaños' books, because I've read a couple of Bolaños' works at this point. And I feel like, okay, those, it's like Bolaño is taking things here, having a conversation with Borges, but also doing his own thing with it, right? Like the heart of 2666 is really a section called The Crimes, in which he's talking about the murder and disappearances of women in Ciudad Juarez. The city's not called Ciudad Juarez in the book, but that's what he's talking about, and that is something that I haven't seen Borges do here. One is probably not something that is a theme for Borges at least, but for Bolaño was because he lived there, because he lived in Mexico, because he's living through those experiences in a way that Bolaño probably did not. The other thing is I now want to read a biography of Borges. I'm interested in his life and how his life experiences are affecting his writing, because I can tell by like the dates in which some of these stories were written that that some of those like global events are impacting him. Like the essays I was just reading were written in 1944, or at least were published in 1944, I believe. Let me double check here, making sure I'm not giving a wrong name. Yeah, 1944. So I can see the effects of global war in the way he's thinking about space and time. But I also see at least a gap here, at least in this collection of stories of the 1950s. In here, there's nothing in here that he wrote or published in the 1950s. In fact, we pick back up his writing in the 60s and 70s, and I'm kind of wondering what happened in his life during that time. Is he not writing? Is he just not publishing? So I'm interested in learning more about Borges himself. So if anybody has read a biography or has a really good book on his life, give me all your recommendations down below. If you've read or are some sort of specialist in Borges or Bolaño, please let me know. I'm just seeing these interesting connections and having a lot of fun reading these books with one of my best friends. The other theme I want to highlight here that reading Borges has really been doing for me is that something I already knew, right? But I want to have a discussion with people, hopefully, on this. In the U.S., which is where I live, oftentimes we see depictions of Latin America as a region of the world that is plagued by crime, poverty, corruption, all of these bad things. And when we only see depictions of Latin America in that way, we forget how rich of a intellectual world Latin America has been and is. And one of the things that reading Borges is doing for me is showing how this long history of being globally connected. Borges is writing about Muslim characters, Arab characters, ancient history. Borges seems really into ancient history, but also like crime fiction and literary fiction, literary reviews. He's interested in kind of meta topics within literature, and Asian character. The last story in the section I just read was an Asian character spying for Germany in England. So it's set during World War II. And that kind of interest in characters with different ethnic and national backgrounds is amazing. And he clearly had knowledge. Clearly he has a lot of ancient history knowledge. He clearly has a lot of knowledge on depicting people from different parts of the world and just global politics and global dynamics. And for young people, I feel like today we don't read a lot of these older Latin American writers unless you are going to get a PhD in Latin American literature. And most of us are not. And it's a reminder that those of us who have Latin American roots, that we come from places that are not just backwards, full of crime, corruption, and poverty. We come from places that are rich in intellectual topics, that there's a long intellectual history in Latin America that we can be a part of if we choose to, and and at least should be aware of how rich that intellectual history is, so that we don't allow ourselves to be put down by ideas of the places we come from as being backwards. Because while there are problems, there's problems in every country, but we're also come from incredibly intelligent, powerful people, and we cannot let others define who we are and where we come from. Basically, is what I'm saying. So I'm having this intellectual process as I'm reading Borges that is taking me in all kinds of directions. I haven't fully, I'm not done reading Borges, so I haven't. Nothing is yet. So things aren't super concrete yet. All my ideas are not super concrete here. So this is just an exploration of some initial thoughts as I'm reading Borges, as I'm beginning to read Borges, and all the things it's popping up in my head. And some of these things I might continue reading Borges and just dismiss some of thoughts and never come back to them again, and some of them I might further develop. So if I have more things I want to share here, watch out for videos on that, but I can't guarantee it, because I'm gonna let Borges take me where he's gonna take me. I'm just gonna allow it to happen and see where I end up. And there's kind of such a beauty in just doing that, engaging in this intellectual pursuit for the sake of it, without an end goal in mind. I'm not writing a dissertation. I'm not writing a book on this. I'm not seeking to profit off of it in any way. So it's just an intellectual pursuit with the purpose of following an intellectual pursuit and interest. Okay, so if you put up with my ramblings for the entirety of this video, thank you so much for watching. Leave me all your thoughts below. Let's have a conversation about this. Let me know what books have done this for you. Which books have you read that once you read the second book, you're like, aha, that's the key to better understanding this other book, or having a new understanding of this other book. Because I just love when that happens, and I would love to hear when it has happened to you. So thank you so much for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.